What's up? Welcome to Academy and welcome to the Samplephonics Part 2, where I made some quite relaxing music with 4 sample packs, namely Afro-Latin percussion, beat scene, cosmic hip-hop, and future bass. So, in Part 1, which is over on the Samplephonics YouTube page, you can see how I went about selecting samples, playing something over it, and just some do's and don'ts which I figured out along the way. And today, what we're going to be doing is we're going to leave off where we left off with the other one, and this was the sound. Which is basically just a bunch of sounds smacked together. And we're going to go to the other side. So we're going to go to arrangement view and turn it into this. So from this, also over here, you guys listen. So it's basically for when you get stuck, this is kind of the video for you to get unstuck. The topics we're going to be covering today is going to be arrangement, mixing, and mastering. And the video is going to be full of tiny little tips of how I would go about doing it, but I'm also going to be putting in quite a lot of video links of videos I think are going to be helpful for you to watch, because covering arrangement, mixing, and mastering in one video is absolutely insane. Anyway, grab yourself a beer and some popcorn, because we're going to be here for a while. So the first topic we're going to talk about today is arrangement. And arrangement is covered widely online. So you can have a Google of musical arrangement and just read theory upon theory upon theory. And I do suggest you do that. But here is some watching material I suggest you get started with. There's the 101 approach, which would be done by Mixthrough TV. So there's a link somewhere in the video right now. Also Point Blank did one with the Ski Oakenfold, which is nice to watch. And some more theoretical ones, which I personally like a lot, would be the strings one. So check that out. There's 2 parts to that. And then the last one would be Julian Bradley, which is a jazz pianist. And he doesn't really talk about arrangement as much, but he talks more about voicing and things like that. And for me, that is also very important for arrangements to begin with. Now, my tip for arrangement, there is one way of doing it, which would be the quick and dirty, easy way. Just get an example from another artist that you really like in the same genre. Doesn't really have to be the same genre, but relatively the same genre. And copy that waveform and warp it and just copy the arrangement. As you can see, I found a song which has a similar arrangement. I'm not going to play this song for copyright issues, but just in case. So you can see that on the waveform that this is a introduction. You can see that a heavy drum part starts there, and then you can see that there's this weird thing that people do, that these 2 waveforms are kind of different, that this is just a completely new song that comes up, and there's that little break that comes in. So I do suggest you check out other people's songs and just put them down and write down exactly what happens when. Now, my personal philosophy of how to tackle arrangement, besides all the theory which you can watch in all the videos that I linked you, would be to get into the headspace of the listener. And once you're in the headspace of the person, I find it a lot easier to situate the song. So what I mean with that is the following. So I see the person who listens to this very relaxing song to be in a very relaxed state. So most likely it's somewhere after 4:20, and it's 4:23, and the guy, I'm thinking it's a guy with headphones on, and the guy is going from point A to point B, traveling in a metro for 5 stops. Okay, so I get very oddly specific, but what that does is that when I would, for instance, take all this and just kind of get rid of it, I'm just going to put it over here for a second. And I need to go over here to the my palette of creative stuff that I've put in here. I will start thinking, this very chilled guy, do I immediately hit him with the drums? Or do I immediately hit him with the bass drum? Or do I first hit him with the harmonics? So I'm thinking this guy is quite relaxed, you know, most likely after 420. And I'll just take this, it's the end of the day. So I just take this main harmonic, which is my legato. So it's a very long, relaxed feeling. It's not staccato, it's legato. So I'll take that, I'll just copy that, and I'll just say like, hey, you know what? That's going to be my introduction. It's also the main thing that started out in video 1 as the main part that started out the whole track. So yeah, that's going to be me for today. You know, I'm happy with this. So that's how I would start the track. And I'll start thinking, okay, so this guy is going to be in a metro. What else can I introduce? Let's just put this Paddy thing in here, because he's probably going to be bored after 4 bars, you know, attention span of not much. So let's just get his attention back up and just add a little pad. Hey, listen. And it's just a little subtle harmonic on top of it. So I would just go and continue doing this. I'll just get that weird thing, which I called weird thing. And just eventually, again, 4 bars later, you're probably seeing a pattern emerge here. That there's this stepping stone pattern of every 4 bars or every 8 bars where some new element is introduced. Now, I personally really like the stepping stone pattern and putting things in, because you can introduce elements of parts of the track already earlier on in the track. So you have like a main vocal, which is my whoop, 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 and About You, or whatever it's called. Maybe it's called Without You. And I like this approach because the guy's headspace is not about to be immediately getting the full wall of sound. So in arrangement, normally what you do is you have an introduction, and that introduction introduces the pre-verse, that pre-verse introduces the verse, that verse introduces the pre-chorus introduces the chorus, and then, you know, from the chorus you introduce the verse again, and then you go to something called a middle 8 most of the time, and then maybe you'll go into the pre-chorus again, and then you'll go into the chorus, and then you go to the outro. But every little part is an introduction to each other. So what I'm trying to do is create that introduction to each other again. So for instance, now that we've introduced all the main parts, which is pretty much just this thing with added harmonics and the sound, I'll start thinking, what comes in after? Also, we've been only introducing legato type of sounds, so very long sounds. So it would be nice to have a... Where's my vocal anyway? Okay, so it would be nice to have a different approach right now, to have a staccato, because it's quite boring just to live in one headspace, one legato headspace, right? I mean, again, the guy has a short attention span. So I'm just going to delete all this and take this and put it back for a second. Obviously, it doesn't work. There we go. So I'm just going to exit. And I just want to show you this point that I'm trying to make here. So once we've been introducing every element easy to this guy, we're going to drop into the bassy part. Basically immediately surprising him with the fat drop. Now, again, you'll notice the same structure happening here, that eventually over time, stepping stone method, I add in more and more instruments. So you'll also notice it with the strings, and especially if you just flatten everything, I mean, you know, what do you call this? Unfold and fold everything. Just click with Alt, you can open up all of them or enclose them all at the same time again. So it's an easy tip. You can see that that stepping stone method is happening, except for in the drums. So normally in the drum group here, I would add in some more drums and some more percussion, and maybe I'll do that in a bit just to showcase it. But basically stepping stone, so that eventually you get to the whole gigantic idea that you had over here. So remember, we put in all those instruments and all those harmonics to make this wall of sound. So I imagine this guy, it's right now, it's 4:22, so he is quite in a good headspace. And I kind of want to ride his wave together with him, okay? So, you know, the sun's setting, no, not sun's not setting, but the sun is nice and warm, you know, because it's summer. And writing together with his headspace, basically that he's easing into it. He's going to get a little bit more like, holy mother of God, what is going on? A little bit of a freak out there on the metro. And then all of a sudden, from that wall of sound, from that whole immersive experience, it's nice to, again, make him snap out of it. So we have this point where people snap out, and we have this point where people snap out. And this is that odd thing people do in this type of genre, is that they just drop a completely new beat in it most of the time. Okay, not all the time, maybe some of the time. But all of a sudden this new beat comes in. So have a listen. So that's my way of how I would arrange. I would literally go over to this palette and think to myself, where is this guy at? What is he doing? And let's introduce things every 4 bars or so. And if I get stuck at I have a wall of sound in this genre, it's completely okay to go into a completely different beat. So I would just stick 2 beats together and have a massively good time. Now, one really big tip though is that you need to get this part where you introduce the next part. You have to get that part right. So in the Samplephonics packs, you always have these effects. So in not going to loops but to one shots, you get these effects, right? So these effects are great to make a little, hey buddy, listen up, we're gonna actually go into a different space. And instead of using them this way, if you want to introduce something new, you can click on reverse and introduce something this way. And it just kind of makes you go like, oh, hey, we're doing something else right now. And you can mix and blend 2 effects together, for instance, with the show fades button. There you go. And you can start making your own gigantic effects thing if you really wanted to like this. But my point isn't really how to make effects blend into each other, but how to get from this idea which you had on the left side to this idea which you had on the right side, which you normally do with turnarounds in music or drum fills or little bits of silence or the effects which I just showed you. Now let's go on to the next topic. Now, just like the previous topic, there are a bunch of videos and channels about mixing. And let me just give you some suggestions of where you can go to check out those things. So I really do suggest Pensado's place and all of their ITLs, or Into the Layers, which is now 144 episodes long. And it's incredibly good to watch that to get an idea of it. Practice makes perfect, by the way. Second one, which I would also recommend, would be Mix with the Masters, which is nice because it's just topics. Might be a little bit too advanced. And then you have another one with its pro audio files with a guy on headphones who's a great guy, and I just don't remember his name right now, but he's a great guy. Also watch that guy. And the biggest tip I have is to find out who the mixing engineer was of your favorite types of tracks or favorite tunes, and Google their names. For instance, for me, Andrew Sheps is a great guy to Google, and he has great talks. Bob Powers, I like that guy a lot. So Google that and go that way as well. And if you want to learn how to mix, there are plenty of people that go through the basics, and I will go through my version as well, which probably won't really cover super basic things, but I'll try and do my best to make sure that everybody understands and can get along. Now, for me, mixing is a very subjective art. There is a lot of do's and a lot of don'ts, but the do's and don'ts are meant to be broken as well. And basically, my approach would again be to get into the headspace of the character, but of the person listening. But at the same time, I will also try to listen to the song as an entity, as a type of feeling. So if I turn off all the processing, it just sounded like this. Okay, so let's just go to the main part here. Command L to loop it if you want to select it. It sounds like this. And that's where we came from on the other side, on the easy session side. But on the arrangement side, you know, we can really get into that mix part. And it sounded like this. And as a mixing person, although I produced the track as well, I put some stuff together. You have to understand the person in the Metro at 423 right now, and you have to understand this song as an entity. And this song as an entity, to me, says it needs to flow. It needs to really brighten up. Because right now it sounds like this. And nobody can hear somebody when they're talking like this. You know, it sounds really muffled. So my first idea was, how am I going to get it to flow? So I want a vibe to continuously flow through. That's sidechain feeling. And the second part that I wanted to do, besides all the, you know, setting the levels and things like that, was to make sure that the song just opens up so you can actually hear what's going on, because this is extremely dull. And here I pulled out as much life as possible as I could out of the dullness of this track, which isn't the fault of anything. It's just the fault of some samples would have very heavy low end in it, which is great, but I had my own bass, you know, so those two, they don't work together, you know. Also, the kick would be a really round, nice kick, which would work great in other examples, but it wouldn't work good here, because again, we have a bass, we had low end from some harmonics, which would work perfectly fine by themselves, but in this situation, it wouldn't work. So that's how I would then listen to the track, have a think, like, what do I want? Write down what I want to do, and go like, okay, let's get started. Now, the way I normally get started in a mix would be to, once I've discovered what I really want to jump out, would be to set the levels. And setting the levels, there is a great Into the Layer about this, so that video is coming up right now. This is an art form by itself. There used to be actually people called balance engineers, I think, and it would just be a guy that would go into the studio with, well, we used to have a big board here, but that's why I'm still touching the faders, post-traumatic stress syndrome. And the guy would come into the thing, and you would hire him to just set all the levels, and after that you do all the EQs and things like that. So I start the same way now. I will try to set all the levels after I made sure that everything's mono compatible, but watch that Into the Layer part, because David Pensado's is way better explaining this kind of stuff to me. But short and simple, I find the loudest element in the song, which most of the time is the kick drum, and for this song anyway, and I will go here and I'll check out this meter, and I want this meter to read about -6 dB. And the reason why I wanted -6 dB is because today I'm also the mastering engineer, and I want some headroom so that I can add more harmonics, so I can add more grit and, you know, a bit of dirty stuff to it during the mix and the master stage. But anyway, -6 dB, that's where I would want it to be. So let's go into the drum group and let's go hang out and check out what we have. So we have the groove here, and I'm just going to turn off everything on the group. So yeah, that's already off, and that's off as well. And let's see what we have. So we are still at 0 dB, so most likely I didn't actually change any levels. But let's just check the levels, okay? So let's try and do it correct. Okay, so we got the levels of 0.49, which would be too loud. Also, a little tip that I definitely suggest you do is on the master. Oh yeah, I already have it here. I always key map this utility. So key map this one. There we go. Actually, not that. No. Let's key map it to 4. So let's key map that one. Let's key map another one to 5. And what you can do with this is you can check out the so if you put this at 200% width, you can check out the sides, and here you can check out the middle, the mono channel. So you have 5 here. Oops. So you have 5 here, which you can turn on and off, and you have 4 here, which you can turn on and off, and then you can check mid sides. And I always suggest that in the beginning for setting levels, it's a very nice and smart idea to do it in mono, because in mono you can easily see what the levels are. I even have a little dedicated speaker for it and dedicated buttons for that over there as well. So always check your level mixing, your balance engineering in mono, and do most of it in mono, and don't think about how it sounds, just do it in mono. It will help you out a lot. And then after, you can be specific and nerdy and go into the width of it. Okay, but that's all for later. But just those buttons, they help a lot. Now let's set this level. So this level is now too loud. So normally speaking, I would have put it down to -6. I think we're still hitting some type of compressor somewhere, but I'm not really sure where. Now let's just turn on, I'm just going to put it back to 0 because I'm not really sure why that's happening. But let's just go over EQ. So the way I would EQ, so just imagine that that drum thing is set to -6 right now. So I'll probably end up with -6 after I go through all these things, but let's just see whatever, how we go on. So the way I like to EQ is to get number 1 and make it a cut-off curve. So you can either have a very sharp cut-off curve or a very not sharp cut-off curve, dull, I guess. And I would get myself a knob and I would twist the knob with my eyes closed. It sounds a bit like a rated R movie, but I would just listen to when it would change. Okay, so I would just listen like this to only the drums. Excuse me, sorry. And I would listen. And then think to myself, you know, do I really need all that low end, or is it nice? Is it cut nice at 44 hertz? Because then I just have the thump of it. And I need to remember, I already have bass. I already have harmonics that have a little bit of bass in it. Do I really need this bass? No, I really don't. So I'll leave the cut right there. And it's a creative choice, as you can see. I'll do the same from the top, and because it's a whole sample with also some hi-hat parts in it. So let's just go to number 8, so band number 8, and I'm gonna just slowly go that way and see what I want. There we go. That sounds about right to me. So I didn't need that little top thing. I did it more hefty here probably for some reason which I don't remember. And then this is a really fun tip. It's to make a cut somewhere. I like cutting before boosting, and the reason I like cutting is, I'll show you in a second, is that you can make the kick really thumpy. So also Google the word Pultec EQ and you'll understand why. As you can see in the waveform, he's already done that little Pultec EQ here. But you can make it even fatter, just getting rid of that thump. So there's like these frequency spectrums, like of mud and all that kind of stuff. You need to figure that stuff out, and have a look at this map that I'll put up right now, or just I'll probably put up a link. And have a look at that, because just remember those frequencies, maybe put it as your desktop background. But these are pretty much mud frequencies, between about 150, 300 hertz. It depends on the kick. It's always dependent in mixing. But at the end of the day, we end up with something like this. Instead of. And you might think this is better, man. But personally, I like that more. So I also cut so much and I made it this dull because eventually I'll go into something called a DBX 160 compressor. Now, we have one original run right there. You can't see it, but it's a very simple little compressor. And this compressor, what it does is it creates some more thump. And it actually cuts a little bit of that low again. And what you get is... You hear how it brightens up? Maybe you can't hear it, but it's quite a good compressor. Again, have a Google around on the DBX160 compressor. I will put a link somewhere where somebody will explain it perfect. But for me, this works, this little DBX compressor. Now, let's check the level that I have right now. Wow, I am still very loud. What's going on? Oh, this is still on. Okay, so we're about -5. I knew it, man. Something was off. So -5, I'm happy about that. And let's also check out this routing. So you can see here that I'm going to the drum/bass routing, where I will have another compressor. Now this compressor, the glue compressor, is based on the SSL compressor, and the SSL compressor is an extremely clean compressor. And what extremely clean compressors do is not add too much character. And right now I don't want too much character. I want just this compressor to do a specific job, and I want it to make the transients more like close together. I want the first part of the transient to be let through with the attack. So if I would put it here, the first part of the transient would be very clicky. If I let it there, the first part of the transient is just very thumpy. Okay, the release is going to be quite fast as well. And then I made it with a dry wet knob, so it's parallel compression. It's a small difference, but let's have a listen to what it sounds like if you listen to the bass group. I mean the drum group. So it just tightens the whole thing together. So everything's tightening together, and I let through the bass as well. And because the bass is playing sometimes at the same time as the drum, I want the subharmonic of the bass to sometimes go together with the drum. And sometimes you'll get a boom, boom, and sometimes you get a bit, bit, which gives a dynamic musical feel to the song instead of just a touch, 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 which is continuously static. Remember, every 4 bars I want something different so that the listener doesn't get bored. This mix is continuously moving because of a lot of little compressors. So let's just turn that on with this. Just listen to the bass. Sometimes it's like, oof, nice together, and sometimes it's just left alone. My personal preference, you can do it any other way you like to, but this is just, my philosophy. I need to make the song more flowy, more moving, more musical. Let's continue to the next part. Now, the next part for me is we're going to still be on drums, but I'm going to already touch upon something called return tracks. So this R button, I think in Ableton language you call it track name? What? No, well, you call it sends or return tracks or buses. They all have different names, but basically what it is just parallel chaining of sound. And the way I approach this is that I think of it as followed. So back in the day, when you were out of the box, you would have a room with artists. So let's just say there's a bassist and a drummer in another room, and it would be mic'd up, and you could also get something called an overhead mic, and that would then in turn have a little bit of reverb over it depending on how big the room was. Okay, there's a video right now on Point Blank, and the guy explains reverbs, and it's amazing. The French guy from Point Blank, he's hilarious, by the way. And I wanted some added reverb to this whole thing, because if it doesn't have that added reverb, I feel that the track would be lacking something. Now this is a tiny amount of reverb, and here it is. And what I did here is that I sent the drum group, I sent a tiny little bit of reverb to this reverb here, and I also adjusted the tail of the reverb. I want the reverb to have a certain character. Remember, I want a flowy, dirty type of track, but not too dirty, so I put an amp behind it. Why not? So let's just have a listen to what it sounds like with and without a reverb. It's extremely subtle, but because both the bass line and the drum group and also all the other songs and stuff share the same reverb the same space, normally you have more reverbs, by the way, but you share the same space, the song sounds more glued together, like there were actually artists over in a room playing this all together. Now, it's an extremely subtle little thing. If I would turn it up, you will feel that it's a bit too much, but just so that you understand. So now it's too much in the background, especially if I... Remember, I was doing everything to make it not sound dull, so even the reverb tail is up high. So let's just put that back to 0, and let's put this back to 0, and let's do it one more time now that you know what the reverb sounds like. Okay, small little thing. Now, what I also tend to do is once I get the bass and the the main groove of the track right, which for me is a very big part, I start to decide how am I going to get the harmonics, the vocals, the strings, how am I going to get all that to fill in the gaps and fill in the groove, because right now we have that nice groove, the compressors are moving nice together, but how are we going to get the harmonics in there nice? Now, I'll normally have a listen again and think to myself, okay, we're going to use some type of LFO tool and get that LFO tool, this one, to bounce with the track. Because if I take off all this stuff here, yeah, that's not doing anything right now, and we just have the main harmonics, it's not grooving together, it's just... So nothing's really happening. So then I use the LFO tool, and I have a great video on this if you don't have a 4 to the floor, which I'll link in the video right now. And I put in this one. And I feel that this then in turn grooves with the top one. But I personally like using compressors to do work for me, and a compressor by the way is just, imagine it's a person with a volume knob, and you can tell the person to turn things on and off according to how loud the track gets. So just remember it like that, volume knob guy. You have German volume knobs, which are very precise, and then you have like an American volume knob would be more chilled out. So right now we need some American volume knob type of feel, I guess. I don't know what. I'll probably put a video in on the CLA 2A or just this compressor. Teletronics, I think, made the first one. It's a very old compressor. And what this one does is only one knob. Basically the gain, that's how much goes back out. And then this is the peak reduction, how much peak reduction you need. So it's basically a very slow musical compressor. I want it to be musical. Which is not doing anything because I didn't turn it on. So it's just touching it minimal amount, but you can see that sometimes it's working harder than other times, and it's very slow, and for me this adds a tiny little bit of character again. I want this to move around and be sexy together and just groove, and I want the guy's headspace to go whoa, you know. Again, this is, by the way, overall compression. So overall on all of the pads and things, because I want overall, I want all the sounds to move together. So the more sounds I will chuck into this final CLA 2A compressor from Waves, the more musical it gets in a way. And by the way, all this is going into another parallel compression called the 76. A lot of compressor talk. So let's talk about the main harmonics. And remember, I was trying to get in the main harmonics to get the sound to come out. So I turn off the bass because there's already a bass element going on. And I got something called a Sheps 73, which is another famous thing. And as you can see, at 12 hertz, I really lift it up. And if I would lift it up here in this one, it wouldn't have the same effect, because this Sheps 73 is is actually adding in quite a lot of character. So now it's quite dull, and with it, it's based on a Neve, but it's just adding some nice, dirty, sexy stuff. So I always suggest you get into using plugins that are a little bit outside of your comfort zone if you're not already comfortable with this kind of stuff. And there are tons of companies that make 1073 EQ things. Ableton is always pretty clean, so more character is always good, and this one adds a lot more character to it. I will put a video on how the 1073 works, explained by Andrew Sheps himself, because he's the guy who made it. Now, overall, I continue doing the same process, so I continue cutting away and thinking to myself, where can I place these two things together? And I literally move down the list like this. So I just turn things on, and I think overall nothing really changes here. So that's that. And I think for the vocal I did exactly the same. I just did little cuts. Nothing special is going on here. But is there anything special going on here? No, it's just the same process. So I'm skipping through this a little bit, but it's just because I want to get to another topic. And that topic is that I have this one here, the CLA 76. And the CLA 76 is based on another very classic compressor. And what this one is going to do is, with the attack all the way on the left and attack and the release all the way on the right, is, it doesn't have to be like that, by the way, is that I put all the harmonics into this CLA 76. So as you can see from my harmonics, everything, this send here is on 0. Okay, this one is on 0, that means all the way up. So the strings are not on 0, that's a bit odd. Boop, let's just put that in there. We'll probably put this down to -6 or so. And what this is going to do is basically, when there is a louder part, also the bass line is going in there, by the way, when the bass is playing da 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 da, the compressor will say, hey, could you just let the da come up first? And then woo will come from this one. Oh, this is the woo part. Let's get the woo part to be up now instead of that bass. And this compressor is basically making sure that the whole of the sound is going to be moving, so that when a guitar solo would start in, the guitar solo will go in the front. When the strings would have a dum 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 dum, the strings will go in the front. When the vocals would be like about you, then the about you will go to the front. Now, use it with subtlety. So I always send everything hardcore, and then I mix it back in. Okay, so that's my my advice there. You can actually see it moving with the bass. And if I change it to this, it changes its characteristics. I find that the bluey works more bright, but it could also be because the bluey looks more bright than the darker one. Now, that is my overall mixing philosophy of how I would do it, and I hope that the little things that I sent in, the videos, will help you a lot as well. And if you need help with this kind of stuff, by the way, I will be glad to mix your song, and at the same time of me mixing your song, I will record every single step so you understand what's going on. And at the end of the day, you'll have a perfectly mixed song with a master on top of that, ready for whatever. And you'll also understand every single step I took, with lots of videos explaining more and more and more stuff. The next topic is going to be mastering, and mastering is another beast on itself. So first, before we start this topic, let me just give you some theoretical videos to go look at. The first one I checked out that really helped me out was a video by Eric Tarr with the Pro Audio Files, showing isotope 5 or 4, I'm not really sure, maybe it was 3. And I watched that video completely, and I just copied and pasted, and then I copy pasted again till I figured out what was going on. Another video was, there's this guy online called Streaky Mastering, which is great, and this other guy named Ian Shepherd, which is also amazing. And as always, whenever you found a song that you really like, Google the mastering engineer's name, and you will get all this amazing information to go with it. Now, as the other parts, there is for me again a philosophy of how I will master a track. So mixing a track, it's a bit more free, and mastering a track, you have more physical limitations. For instance, if you master for vinyl, there are going to be physical limitations. If you master for an MP3, you're going to have to keep certain things in mind. It's the same with arranging, by the way, same with everything else. You're going to have to keep things in mind. But we're kind of getting further away from the listening guy in the metro, because the listening guy in the metro is eventually going to say, hey, check out this song on the phone. And you can't let that just fall flat. You're going to, it can't only sound good on this. It's going to have to sound good on this. It's going to have to sound good in this room right now. So the mastering part for me is you basically, I don't know how to say it perfectly, but you basically try to get your mix to sound as good as possible. So first we try to get the song to sound as good as possible in the mix, to get it more musical and flowy and doing all these things. And now we're going to try and get the whole overall mix, so you're kind of getting a step further away again, to sound as good as possible. Now, during the mixing process, and again, it's a bit weird to do everything yourself, but during the mixing process, take a break, okay? So once you've done this, take a break and just leave this song alone for a week or so. If you're going to do everything yourself, work on a couple of the other songs. Get some reference tracks. So I had this audio 30 here or whatever. Get some reference tracks and listen to those and try to think in how wide does the song sound, for instance? How loud does the song sound? How bright is the song? And get your mix as good as possible towards that thing, but don't get it too loud, because that's where mastering goes in. So normally in the mix, I would still have 2-bus processing. I would try to get it sounding even better. We have a tape machine, a Telefunken tape machine, and we got some nice gear here to make it sound better. So I would most likely break out of the box and just use some analog processing and get a 2-track into this ozone thing here. But right now we're going to be completely in the box, and we're going to go from here. So I like using Ozone 7. I also like using Waves. UID is also very nice, but for simplicity's sake, I absolutely love Ozone 7. I think it's magnificent for a couple of different reasons, but let's first start with this. Let's just work backwards for a second so you understand why there's a cut on the low and there's a cut on the high. So the reason why I made the cut on the low, let's focus on that first, is that basically this vintage limiter, brick wall limiter, I'll put a Google thing to show you what that is. I'm not going to explain everything because otherwise this video is going to be really long, and right now it's already probably touching like 45 minutes. So limiters and dynamics, so compression, and most of the time I would have another couple of compression things in here. They love bass. They absolutely love bass. So that's why I'm thinking to myself, all the way in the beginning of this process, because this is going into this, so the EQ is going into the exciter is going to dynamics is going to the imager. You can also switch things around if you want to, but I like this right now. I'm trying to cut out all this bass, because anything below 20 hertz, it's hardly audible, and most speaker systems will not go below this 20 hertz. And if you think about back in the day, Beatles type of stuff, like vinyl type of stuff, you couldn't even do this because it would be physically impossible. And then people say that vinyl sounds warmer, for instance. You get what I'm saying here? So there's no point of having a massive amount of bass here, and you would do, I can't even put this up right now, but you would, why can't I put this up, by the way? So you would have this, for instance, there. That makes absolutely no sense. So first, I'll just have a cut in the low and a cut in the high, because this thing is going to not work right. This thing is not going to work right, and I need that cut right there. I also make a cut in the high because I don't want my highs to be peeking out here and there. Again, it's the same principle that most speaker system and our hearing to begin with isn't going to go above 20 kilohertz. However, there's something called psychoacoustics. So there are some people that will say, hey, but I do think if you put a bump at 50 kilohertz, it will create something called air. And I definitely agree with that. However, I do that over here, and I do that with the Vintage EQ, which is a hybrid Pultec simulation. Again, Pultec, Google that. So first and foremost, cut the high, cut the low, cut the high. Second, I get something called a exciter, and what an exciter does is, one second, let me just turn all these things off for a second. What an exciter does is that it excites the sound. So for some reason, a great mastering engineer once told me over at the studio, he said that our ears are now used to loud sounds, and loud sounds also have something called excitement, and excitement is something that is a tiny little bit of distortion. There's a tiny little bit of distortion just over the sound. So we have a song, okay? It's not like mixing anymore. It's not a song anymore. It's just sound for a second. It's a tiny little bit of distortion. And what an exciter is supposed to do is supposed to be like, if I turn it on, you're supposed to just tell a difference, but not make it not a big difference, just a tiny little difference. So let's just have a listen so that you understand this. Okay, so limiter is off, dynamics is off. So, you ready? What this exciter is doing is just giving it a tiny little bit of an edge. There's a button here actually, which shows how much I'm actually doing. And you can see mostly I'm adding it over here, but it's such an absolute small difference. And I do suggest that once you use Ozone 7, for instance, it also is in 6 and 5. If you just click over here on these different types of excitement, you can look here. You can kind of feel that there is different types of vibes in it. Now, it's up to you which you like the most. Currently, I like tube the most. Most of the time, I use tape. So it doesn't really matter. Also, this little button, this ear button, actually doesn't give a bump in level. Because remember, if something sounds louder, it sounds better. So a lot of people will cheat you if you go to somewhere and they'll go like, yo, check this song. But then just ask him to turn it back down, because then you can actually judge how it sounds. Felcher-Musk, there's a curve about this. I'll also put that up right now. So there's a theory about the curve on when things sound good, when things don't sound good. Regardless of that, let's move on. So excitement, I use that. Normally you can use any type of saturation to get the excitement good. There's also something called summing, which adds a little bit of separation, and which is basically an imager and an exciter combined, which you use prior to this whole thing. Okay, so Google the word summing, API summing, Neve summing, or summing by itself. We have a little thing here for that. Now, dynamics. It's hard to explain this if you don't understand it too well, but the dynamics part, for me, this was really hard to understand in the beginning when I started out, which is quite a while ago. And the reason it's not hard because of the way it's set up. You can check out the Eric Tarr video for that, but it's more hard in the way of you need to learn how to listen to figure out what you want out of the sound. You can't just say like these dynamic settings will always work for one song. So just to get into that, each of these dynamic parts adds something. So I'm just going to turn on and off the dynamics, and maybe you can try and figure out what the difference is. So when the dynamics are turned off, basically this is now built up out of 4 frequency bands. What the dynamics are doing is that in the top frequency band and this frequency band, what I said to it was to say, listen, I don't want that first transient. So with the attack, I'll tell the guy with the volume knob to turn that shit down. I mean, to turn that stuff down, because it's it's a little bit piercing to my ears. And if I would turn this up all the way, for instance, because, you know, I'm on headphones and I'm in the metro and I'm not really liking it, that there's a baby screaming, for instance, or there's somebody yapping their mouth right next to me, I want to be able to turn it up without thinking to myself, my ears hurt, okay? If I would have the dynamics off, actually turn up your computer right now, your thing you're listening to. It hurts a little bit. Now turn it on again. It shouldn't hurt as much. And the reason why is that these frequencies from, well, pretty much 1K to around 10K-ish, that's where the ears are the most sensitive. So I try to keep things a little bit quiet there. Again, it's not really true, because in this frequency band, which is very wide, because most of the information from the song is there, I actually said I would like it to be more attacky. So let's just listen to this frequency band, for instance. This is where the meat and potatoes of the song are, by the way. So if you listen to it on a phone, this is where the song will come out. Or on like one of those iPod pill things, you know, those doctor, I don't know what you call them. And here I wanted the song to be attacky. You can actually see that here, that the transient is letting through the first kick part and letting through the bottom of the snare part first and foremost, so it sounds thick. Okay, I know this is all getting a bit abstract for some of you, and for some of you, you're just like, yeah, man. So yeah, for the bass, I did the same. So if somebody would have a full system, I want that kick to thump you in the chest the most. And I don't care about because that's already playing a role here. Okay, so that's dynamics in a nutshell. If you want to have more information on that, just write it in the description, and I will in the comments below, and I will help you out with that. Now, this imager is an extremely powerful tool. I absolutely love this imager. Summing would be a way as well. We have this Alicia here that would be great as well. We have another expander over there, but I think this imager does an extremely good job. It's not an expander, by the way. I don't know what it's called. BBE? I don't know, whatever. But this imager for me does an absolutely genius job. So check this out. Now this imager is only going to work quite well if you've really taken care of your mix. If you, for instance, didn't check these two buttons, remember the utility thing that I showed you earlier on, the 4 and the 5? So if your mix doesn't work in mono to begin with, then this imager is not going to work. And if your mix is so wide that you hear the bass on the side, this imager is not going to work. I don't think anybody's ever really covered the imager online in a very deep type of feel, but regardless, here, check this out. You have something called Vectorscope, okay? Probably people have talked about Vectorscopes. And in a Vectorscope, if most of your song is between 0 and +1, you don't have a phasing issue. If you're between 0 and -1, you're going to have phasing issues. So what I always suggest you do is that you go and you check out all of your stems, so all of your little parts of your song, and you're just going to have to check if they're between 0 and -1. If they're between 0 and -1, grab yourself a utility, put down the width a little bit, or check out how can I make my super stereo image more mono. So yeah, very, very, very important, because if you have phasing issues, what will happen is if I now put this song on mono, let me just turn everything on, and if I would have phasing issues, let's just put something out of phase. Let's just put the Voxes out of phase, okay? Actually, let's put the Harmonics completely out of phase. So I'm going to get a utility. So you understand what's going on. I'm going to get a utility. I'm going to put it on Harmonics, and I'm going to put it on 200% width. It'll sound great right now. Sounds very wide. Actually, let's put it at 150 width because most of the sounds are still there. But if I now go here and I click on the mono button, sound will disappear. And that is completely now the fault of me not having checked, for instance, number 5, how much stuff is on the sides and how much stuff is in the middle. Okay, so super handy tip. What you can do now with this stereo width is that you can click on learn, and then it will learn the bands, and this stuff you can just find online. But what I like the most about this imager is that if you go to codec, what it will tell you in codec is that you can listen to the codec and you can listen to the solo codec artifacts. And what codec artifacts do, and again I'm linking a video in the description right now, is that basically if you take this waveform, which will be, I don't know how many megabytes, but it will be quite a significant file, maybe what, 140, you know, I don't know, megabytes, and if you take it to an MP3, it'll go to what, like 6 megabytes or so. What the MP3 will do is it will unravel your song and then put it back together like Star Trek, you know, it'll be like, beam me up, Scotty. But instead of being beamed up and being put back to normal, it will take certain features away which the human ear can't really hear anyway. So that means that side channels on the very high frequencies, because you can't really hear that, and the very bottom frequencies are going to be cut away. So if I want my song to work in 96 kilobytes, this one, if I want it to work here, so let's just have my 96 kilobytes version. Listen. It's not very different from each other, and the reason why it's not very different from each other is because I made sure that my low band 1 frequency is actually not having any side frequencies, and the top one, because that's the first part that these MP3s or any other type of file format will cut off frequencies. So I made sure that those two things are already controlled and I already have the sound I want to have. And I made sure that the middle part, where people can really, the meat and potatoes, people can really hear the song, that's nice and wide, if I needed the song to be wide, for instance. And that's what I did with this track. Okay, so imager before. Imager after MP3. And let's solo these artifacts. Let's just solo the artifacts on MP3 on the sides, and you'll be able to hear those things. Make sure you have headphones. It's on the side. Here, listen. It's mostly on the side. Let's just go to 320. See, that's on the side. So they cut off those sides. So if you already think about that in your mastering process, that you don't need that problem, that physical limitation, hey man, all good in the hood. So now the vintage limiter, I love this. I mean the vintage EQ. I love this EQ because it's a Pultec EQ, and I'm not going to explain it because there are amazing videos online for this, and this is my absolutely favorite thing to plop at the end of a master chain. So have a listen. No, I will give this video, I will give to somebody who will explain it much better than I do, because there's so many little tips and tricks in this that this could be like an hour series by itself. I love this thing. And the last thing I have on the chain is a vintage limiter, and that's just to get it up to level a little bit. And I hate that I just said that, but unfortunately I have to say this. I had to get the track a little bit louder. There is lots of discussions online about louder is better, and you know, that the loudness war is still going on, but my opinion is the loudness war is over. There's many proven facts about this, and I'll probably pop some things out there. But I like this limiter because it doesn't add any artifacts, and I'm not gonna go into the loudness war. I will stay away from it. It's not my thing to talk about right now. But overall, this was the video. And I know it might have been a little bit too much here and there, but I hope that the videos that I put up was supplementary. And again, if you want me to mix and master tracks and walk around the studio with a microphone and the little camera showing you, look, this is the tape, and I'm using the tape because this will add this to your thing, then just let me know. You can contact me, catandbeats@gmail.com. And if you've made it to this part of the video with your beer and popcorn, good job. Again, I want to thank Samplephonics for giving the opportunity, for letting me play around with their absolutely great sample packs here. And I hope to see you guys again soon. Much love. Take care.